What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. It's your boy Al. It's getting close to time for Pacquiao Spence, the 21st of August this month. Manny Pacquiao, will be going for boxing immortality, trying to beat a young top 5 pound for pounder in Errol Spence. So I want to give my breakdown and prediction of the fight and what scenario both fighters can win. Manny Pacquiao, in my opinion, top 10 all-time fighter, ruler of 8 weight classes, kind of an old school fighter in the sense that losses don't define him. It's how he's been able to improve and evolve. Back in the day, fighters could take losses and then evolve into all-time great fighters. Before the Mayweather days, before Mayweather brainwashed everybody into thinking that being undefeated is what mattered the most. Manny Pacquiao took on all comers. In my opinion, was sort of a modern day Henry Armstrong, not quite Henry Armstrong, but modern day in the sense that he dared to be great. He moved up and challenged guys who people thought he shouldn't challenge. He dared himself. He took on those challenges that when you saw the fight sign, you said, man, I don't know how he's going to win this one. And somehow he won them. Great all-time fighter. Beat Keith one-time Thurman in one of those fights that was just that. A fight where you said, man, I don't know how he's going to win this. And beat a top 5, top 10, undefeated, unified world champion in Keith one-time Thurman, the man who had ruled the welterweight division for a little while. He's fighting Errol Spence. Errol Spence, undefeated American fighter, been a world champion now for a while. Kind of been eluded by some fighters, has not had the opportunity to be on that big stage. Now this is his chance to be on that big stage outside of his fight with Mikey Garcia, which I don't really consider a fight where he was on a big stage, because Mikey Garcia, even though he was a undefeated top 5, top 10 pound for pound fighter, was a lightweight jumping up to welterweight. So that fight, good fight, did what he was supposed to do, did what he had to do. But now he's fighting an all-time great in Manny Pacquiao. First, I'm going to break down how each fighter can win. How Errol Spence can win is simply his youth, his punching power, and a busy work rate. Youth is on his side. He has to enforce his size on Manny Pacquiao, which, by the way, no one has been willing to do. I don't consider Errol Spence bigger than Antonio Margarito. I don't consider him bigger than Miguel Cotto, and neither one of those guys was able to impose that physicality on Manny Pacquiao. Now, both were coming off of brutal beating losses when they fought Pacquiao, but still, he was able to impose his will on them. So Spence, how he can win this fight is using his youth, his punching power, his busy work rate. He has to try and somehow be effective with his jab. These will be two southpaws, so he has to somehow figure out how to be busy with his jab, somehow find a way to be busy with his work rate, and he will have to just use his sheer physical ability, his physical talents, his physical strength, and his youth to beat and overpower Manny Pacquiao. He can't do a lot of what he does sometimes early in fights, and that's waste a lot of time trying to give fights away. Trying to figure fights out, trying to figure fighters out. He has to go out and he has to get in Manny Pacquiao's face from the offset. He has to go out and he has to show he is the dominant pound for pound fighter right now. Manny Pacquiao will not be intimidated. He will not be impressed by Errol Spence. So Errol Spence has to come out and show and give Manny Pacquiao something to be impressed with. He has to hit Manny Pacquiao with something hard, and he has to hit Manny Pacquiao with something early. We know Manny Pacquiao can be hurt. He can be knocked out. So what Spence has to do is he has to come out and he has to almost swarm on Manny Pacquiao, which is really not his style. You look at the Mikey Garcia fight. You look early in the fight with what's the guy from London that he fought? that he beat for the title. For whatever reason, I just drew a blank right now. I'll think of his name in a minute, but he kind of stood back until he turned it on, and finally beat him to take the title. Now again, we know he was coming off of a Kell Brook. Kell Brook was coming off of a brutal yet heroic beating at the hands of Triple G, and his eye was already damaged, so he was not who he was before that fight. And Spence took advantage of that, came on late, kept the pressure on to stop the fight. The way he fought the second half of that fight against Kell Brook, he's going to have to fight against Manny Pacquiao the whole fight. He's going to have to come out and he's going to have to bomb Pacquiao from the onset. He can't allow Pacquiao to use his lateral movement. He has to cut the ring off, and he has to be the bigger man, because he's not the faster man, even though, and this is very rare, where the younger man is not the faster man. I think we saw that with Thurman. Younger than Pacquiao, but not the faster man. Stronger, younger, but not the faster man. So a lot of ways that youth would serve Errol Spence in a fight with an older fighter, it's not going to serve him here, because he will not be the faster fighter with hand or foot. We're going to get into that hand and foot speed a little bit later, and why that could come back to doom Errol Spence. But how Errol Spence can win this fight is come out and be the bigger man, be the stronger man, push Pacquiao around, force Pacquiao to fight when he doesn't want to fight, make Pacquiao let his hands go, because one Manuel Marquez showed us that the way you get to Manny Pacquiao is you make him let his hands go, and then when he lets his hands go, you let your hands fly. One of the big mistakes people made with Manny Pacquiao during his prime, especially when he really got going against bigger guys and he was so much faster than they was they were so overwhelmed by his hand speed that when he would just let his rapid fire punches go, you would see guys just stand there and wait for him to finish. But the problem is he would never finish, or by the time he was finished, he had done so much damage, you were left really without much to respond with. Look at the fight against Oscar De La Hoya. People waited for Oscar De La Hoya to let his hands go, but Pacquiao just kept throwing and throwing and throwing, and all Oscar did was this all night long. You look at Antonio Margarito, same thing. He just let his hands go all night long. But what Juan Manuel Marquez showed us was this. Juan Manuel Marquez showed us that as dangerous as it is to catch Manny Pacquiao's punches, when he's letting go of these rapid punches, these rapid fire punches, these hard punches, dangerous punches, as dangerous as it is to get caught by those, when he's in the middle of letting it all go, it's the only chance you have. That's your chance. That's your chance. You're going to have to put yourself at risk and let your hands go when he lets his hands go. The reason why Juan Manuel Marquez, in my opinion, in the 4 fights, won, I'd say cleanly 2 of them. In my opinion, I had Juan Manuel Marquez cleanly winning 2 of those fights, the 3rd and the 4th. First, a draw, okay. The second one, you could go either way. But cleanly, he won the 3rd and the 4th. And he's always given Pacquiao fits in all 4 of those fights. But why? The reason why is because Juan Manuel Marquez figured out that when Pacquiao throws, that's when you throw. Yeah, you're going to get hit, you're going to get caught, but it's also because of the way he lets his hands go and how open he is when he does. It's also your best opportunity to hit him. And you look at all their fights. Go back and look at after the first half of the Pacquiao Marquez won, and then look at 2, 3, and 4. And all of those fights have that commonality. Whenever Pacquiao would throw, Juan Manuel would let his hands go. Okay, his hands were not as fast as Pacquiao's, but he didn't care. He still let his hands go because he knew when he opens up, that's my opportunity to catch with something. And you would see they were getting exchanges. Pacquiao would throw and Juan Manuel would let his hands go. And you'd see Pacquiao get caught with stuff and rocked and staggered. And you're like, wow, Juan Manuel's being effective. Yeah, because he knows when Pacquiao comes in swinging, I'm swinging right back. I'm going right back because he's open, he's landing, and he's hitting me. But the only chance I have to hit him back and land and hit and nail him with something is while he's in the middle of throwing. And so you go and you look at second half of fight 1. Look at all of fight 2. Look at all of fight 3. Look at all of fight 4 to the knockout. Juan Manuel Marquez let his hands go at the exact same time Manny Pacquiao let his hands go. He's the one who figured that out. That's how you be effective against Manny Pacquiao. What Errol Spence cannot do is what everybody else has done. And that's wait while Pacquiao is letting his hands go and wait till he's done and then let yours go. That's not a good look. And see, Errol Spence has that habit. He wants to show you that you didn't hurt him and show you that he's stronger. So he'll let you rip off punches and then he'll look at you and smile and tell you that didn't hurt me. That didn't do nothing. That's not a good look against Pacquiao, because those punches will pile up. They will add up. I know Errol has had a good chin against Brook and against Mikey. They not Pacquiao. And yeah, Pacquiao doesn't punch like he did in his prime. That's up for discussion why. But you can't just stand there with your hands up, letting him punch and then show him you're not phased. And then you got to catch him to try to get yours back. And by the time you catch him to get yours back, he lets another combination go. And then you end up in that situation all night long like Keith one-time Thurman did. So Errol Spence has to let his hands go. He has to open up when Pacquiao opens up. He has to cut the ring off. He has to hit Pacquiao with something that hurts him. He has to hit Pacquiao with something that makes Pacquiao want to keep his hands home and go on the defensive. He has to push Pacquiao back with his jab. He has to push Pacquiao back with his strength. He has to make Pacquiao fight going backwards and not fight going in a circle like he's used to. That's what Errol Spence has to do to win this fight. On the other hand, here's what Manny Pacquiao has to do to win this fight. Manny Pacquiao has to do simply what Manny Pacquiao does best, and that's punch on the move. Punch while he's on the move. Manny Pacquiao has the ability to hit you and hurt you and throw punches while he's on the move, while he's in and out. He has to keep Errol Spence off balance, because one thing, and it's funny, Errol Spence, one of his favorite fighters, and not his favorite fighter of all time, is a guy named Terrible Terry Norris. Go back and look him up if you're too young to remember who Terrible Terry Norris is, and look at some of his prime fights. It's funny that that Terrible Terry Norris is one of Errol Spence's favorite fighters, because what Terrible Terry Norris had the ability to do in that fight was what Errol Spence needs in this fight and does not have. And that's what I was just talking about. Pacquiao has his ability to punch and move at the same time. Some years ago, Terrible Terry Norris fought a guy named Meldrick Taylor. Meldrick Taylor, one of the fastest fighters in history, maybe one of the 5 fastest fighters in history. And he had just come off of Julio Cesar Chavez loss, recovered, won the welterweight title, was moving up to super welterweight to fight Terrible Terry Norris. And in the first couple of rounds, he using his hand and foot speed to catch Terry Norris pretty cleanly with some shots. But Terrible Terry Norris basically did this. He adjusted his game, and he does this thing where he would do this thing where he would just bounce. He would bounce back and forth to get some rhythm. And then what he did was he caught his foot, he synchronized his hand and his foot speed. And every now and then he would bounce, and while he was moving side to side, back and forth, he would let his hands go while his feet want to move. And then when he would let his hands go, he would be in position to shift his body in different positions. He did this early on against Julian Jackson before he got caught. He did this to a T. Go and look up Norris Simon Brown 2. You will see him do that masterfully, where he just let punches go. It was kind of like a pre-Manny Pacquiao, with his ability to just fire off these rapid punches and move in a circle at the same time, and just kept Simon Brown all night in a position where he couldn't punch, because anytime he look up to punch, Norris would be gone. That's what Errol Spence needs, and that's what he does not have. And it's weird. I've watched Errol Spence for quite some time now. Errol Spence is a fighter who is what I call a plotter. A plotter is basically the opposite of what Terrible Terry Norris was. A guy who could bounce. Because what Norris did in that, going back to that fight with Meldrick Taylor, that's how he caught up to Taylor. He used his foot and hand speed. He combined the two. He started bouncing and using his agility to catch up with Taylor and ultimately stop him in 5. Spence is a plotter, though. He's a guy who stands flat-footed and just 1-2 steps you down. 1-2 steps you down. He 1-2 steps you down. That's not a good trait to have against Pacquiao. Flat-footed fighters never do well against Manny Pacquiao. And I'm concerned with Spence having that plotter mentality, that flat-foot mentality, because how Pacquiao can win is if he just keeps moving from side to side, letting his hands go, and taking advantage of Errol Spence thinking and knowing he's the bigger, stronger fighter, and always trying to prove that all night long by not moving his feet enough. Just standing in one spot, plodding, walking him down. Jab, jab, step, step, hands up, jab, step. That's not going to get it done against Manny Pacquiao. Pacquiao can win this fight if he takes advantage of his hand and his foot speed, and if he takes advantage of something I saw in the Mikey Garcia fight with Errol Spence. His lack against bigger name opponents of a killer instinct. He said something in that fight against Mikey Garcia, how he wasn't even trying to stop Mikey Garcia. He wasn't going for the knockout. That in a fight against Manny Pacquiao, you had better go for the knockout. Don't get in here with Manny Pacquiao with a soft heart, and don't get in here in awe of the moment and the man. Because Spence strikes me as somebody who will get in there and be in awe of the moment and the man, Manny Pacquiao. Spence, when you see them side by side, huge difference in size. But Manny Pacquiao has proven time and time again that does not matter. So there are several ways that I could see Manny Pacquiao winning this fight. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not one of these people who says, oh, it's going to be Errol Spence, no questions. Manny Pacquiao can win this fight. He can totally win this fight. The truth of the matter is he's beating a greater man than Errol Spence. He's older. And we want to see what he has left in the tank. But let's be real. He's beating a greater fighter than Errol Spence. Overall, when you look at his opponents throughout the course of his career, he's beating a greater man than Errol Spence. So when I look at the two fighters, I give Spence the edge in power, Spence the edge in physicality. I give Pacquiao the edge in speed, hand and foot, ring generalship. Give him the edge in boxing IQ. I give Spence the edge in chin, even though he hasn't been in there with a guy who punches as fast and as hard as Pacquiao. We'll see. There's a lot of fighters who had chins before they got in there with guys like Pacquiao. But I give Manny Pacquiao the edge in versatility. He's way more versatile than Errol Spence. And we get to see if inactivity and big fight inexperience comes back to haunt Spence, because he has not had super big fights. He had a couple of big fights. He had a couple of, Garcia, and there were a couple of other guys he fought in there. Porter was a pretty good fight, pretty competitive fight. So that was that fight. That counts as a fight that, tested him, because Porter's a pretty strong guy. But again, Porter's not the most agile. He hasn't seen anybody like Pacquiao. But and you go back and you look at that Kell Brook fight. Early on in that fight, Brook was piecing Errol Spence up. And Brook sort of has that ability to punch on the move, has that ability to slip and slide in and out, has the ability to, do things with his feet on the move. And he was catching Errol Spence. He was piecing Errol Spence up. Spence really needed to turn it on to get Brook out of there. Took advantage of the eye, being injured, of course. But if that's any indication, Pacquiao can have some success. So here's my prediction for the fight. I'm picking Errol Spence to win by the closest of margins. I think at the end of this fight, people will be surprised at how close it is. I'm picking Errol Spence to win by the closest of margins because I think he will use his physicality, and I think he'll be busy enough to beat Pacquiao. But let me say this: I would not be surprised one bit if Pacquiao won that fight. Pacquiao wins that fight, I will not come back on him and be like, oh my God, I can't believe what I just saw. No, I'll believe it because Manny Pacquiao is, in my opinion, one of the 10 greatest fighters of all time. So give me your opinion. What do you think? Who you think is going to win this fight? How do you think they're going to win it? What chance do you think Spence has? What chance do you think Pacquiao has? I got Spence winning by the closest of margins, but like I said, Pacquiao is a boxing God. He can do it all. I'm convinced of his greatness, and he could easily win this fight. So stay tuned. 21st of August. We'll see how this thing goes. Hit me in the comment section, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you like what you see. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, whoever likes boxing, come sit down and talk boxing with your boy. Holla.